Welcome, friends, capital F and lowercase. My name is Lucas Meyer-Lee, and it's my pleasure to be here with you all tonight for Pendle Hill's first Monday lecture. As many of you know, since 1930, Pendle Hill has been an experiment in spiritual learning community located in Lenape land on what is now known as Philadelphia. Hello to our leaders, to our alumni, and to those who are new to us tonight. Before I say a little more about our program tonight, I want to go over a few brief tech aspects. I'm joined by Pendle Hill staff and guests, including Maddie Rose and Francis Kramer, who will be assisting with tech. If you have any technical difficulties or questions, please message Pendle Hill Tech Support, and they'll do their best to support you. In terms of tech, there are a few other small notes. You may have noticed that we are live streaming this video to our YouTube channel, Pendle Hill USA. Only those speaking will be live streamed, and in the coming days, we'll send out a link to the recording, along with some other resources and queries from tonight. In addition, we've enabled live transcription, so you're able to access closed captioning, and that will be available also for our live stream over YouTube. Finally, at the end of the night, we will have an opportunity to share time for Q&A, so look forward to that. We're especially grateful to the Friends Foundation for the Aging, who support Pendle Hill, including, in fact, funding my position, allows us to continue making our first Monday lecture series and our other online offerings free to friends of all ages. The theme of this lecture in particular, Living into Love at the End of Life, is a wonderful extension of Friends Foundation for the Aging's mission to create a world where older adults have dignity and self-determination, are valued and respected, and enjoy the support of adequate resources, healthcare, and community. It is our hope that in these challenging times, this lecture series can be a moment for us to turn towards each other, learning how to build this beloved community together. Now, I'm delighted to be able to introduce our speakers for tonight, Patti Nesbitt and Kristin Zimet. Patti and Kristin are co-authors of A Tender Time, Quakers' Voices on the End of Life, published by Baltimore Yearly Meeting in 2024 and available through the bookstore at Pendle Hill. A link to that will also be sent. And you can see that the book is being held up right now if you want a teaser for it. Patti and Kristin also recently led 3 workshops for Pendle Hill called Hand in Hand, Aging Together in the Spirit. And we'll send out also at the end of tonight's show a link to those recordings if you're interested in more from Patti and Kristin. Patti graduated from the School of the Spirits program Becoming a Spiritual Nurturer in 2000. And over the course of years, she has been an active in BYM camping programs, intervisitation, and the End of Life Working Group. Together with her husband, she travels widely in the ministry under the care of Sandy Springs Friends Meeting in Maryland, where she is a member. At 55 years old, she went to nursing school, deciding to focus on palliative care and hospice. Surviving cancer made her unafraid of death and willing to companion people with terminal diagnoses. She is currently a registered nurse teaching about end-of-life choices. Kristin Zimet has spent her life in creative approaches to healing, the arts, and environmental activism. Kristin was a partner in a creative ministry for children hospitalized with cancer in New York City and an emergency medical technician in rural Connecticut. She is a longtime patient care volunteer, working first for hospice and now for Winchester Medical Center. As a Reiki master, she has been both a healer and a teacher. At home, she has been a long-term caregiver and a 2-time cancer survivor. Kristin explores the changing dynamics of the heart through poetry and visual art. She's the longtime editor of the So's Year Poetry Review and the author of a book of poems, Take in My Arms and the Dark. A graduate of Swarthmore College, Kristin is a member of Hopewell Center Meeting in Virginia. Patti and Kristin, thank you both for joining us tonight. Now we'll take a moment to settle back into silence, and then I'll invite both of you to break that silence when you feel it.
Hello, everyone. It is wonderful to have so many of you here with us tonight. And I applaud you all for being fearless enough to have come. Uh, the chief reason why there are few conversations about end of life, about aging, about dying, is fear. Uh, and I understand that. When I was a little girl, and I lay in my bed afraid at night, I developed a mantra for myself. And I said, if you're afraid of something, walk towards it. So we are going to be walking towards it tonight. Uh, Instead of downplaying the fear, we're going to talk about it and we're going to upplay the hope that is a partner to it. It's a surprise to get old, isn't it? Every time I look in the mirror, I am slightly surprised. It's a brand new time of life, and it's as new as it must have been for us the first time we turned over in the crib. I have the power to do that. My body is not what I thought. The first time we stood and toddled across the room. The first time as teenagers, we started developing adult bodies. This is a new time of life for us physically and also spiritually. And fear and hope are both present. This talk is going to be a starting point. We're going to broach a lot of questions and give you some of our own answers to encourage you and get you started in getting your answers. Some of the questions that we ask will be available eventually in the form of queries that will be sent to you so that you can follow up on this conversation with conversations of your own. So today, January 6th, was chosen, and I think very appropriately, and not for the political reasons you might think, but because it is Three Kings Day. Three Kings Day, which you might know as Epiphany, or when the Magi came and saw Jesus in the manger. And I'll tell you why I think it's appropriate. I think of them not as three kings, really, but as three elders, older spiritual leaders. And many of us are already elders, or we are moving in that direction in our lives. The Magi had a new direction to travel, and it was a far journey. It took them 3 years to get there. And we too are engaged in a long journey of change that has taken us years and will take us, I hope, more years.
More than 3 years?
More than three, I promise, yes.
No.
They came out of their cultural context, out of their comfort zone, out of their familiar paradigm in order to do it. And so are we. The Magi were spirit-led. Dreams guided them. And they were willing to change in response to guidance. And so are we. They were open to finding new faith, a shift of faith, as many of us may turn out to be. And they came carrying gold, frankincense, myrrh, whatever they deemed the most precious thing they could bring. So I invite you to think as we proceed what gifts you may be carrying in your maturity. What is your gold, frankincense, and myrrh, which you are now coming to offer to others? When they got to the manger, it was a meeting of maturity and of new birth. And we too, in ourselves, are old and well-seasoned and yet brand new. I'm brand new to being old. So we too are at a meeting point of maturity and birth.
Thank you. Wow. It's nice to be here. And it's nice to have that lead in. Thank you. I'm not quite sure I'm ready to get on that camel and go ride, but I would. I've done that once though. I want to talk about fear. And because the title tonight is letting us love or live into love at the end of life, but also be not afraid. So what is this thing that's fear? I think that culturally we've been living in a lot of fear. I think it came to us from our parents, and they who had experienced the Depression and World War II. We grew with more fear during our early days, with more wars. There's been more wars since then. And September 11th culturally really took us to a whole new level of fear. I think George Bush really helped move our country toward fear. And certainly the last several years, we've had more civil discord and more afraidness of each other. And COVID just kind of put the nail in it all. At this point, sometimes we're just afraid of each other. And I want to raise this up at this point because I think the fear of death is one of those really basic, essential fears of all of life, that biologically we need to survive, and at the same time, our bodies and all of life is also goes downhill, and essentially the essential fear of our biology is something that we have to come to deal with dramatically if we are really going to be Quakers living into being a loving, beloved community. And so we want to talk tonight a little bit about what are those fears and how do we reformat them, and how do we reclaim our own heritage that really is a life of love, that allows us has taught us a practice of coming together to be a listening community, listening to embody the love of God in our world now. So it's like the essential question of being afraid of death is very similar to the practice, or very well counterbalanced by the practice of worship, which is one where we immerse ourselves in love. And I've always, I guess I should say, always consider love and fear to be 180 degrees from each other. So let's talk a little bit about why we are afraid of dying and why we're afraid of old age.
Well, for me, one reason is that we are so plainly in a culture of youth that prioritizes. You're beautiful if you're young. If you're old, you're over the hill. And that has been the presumption of all the media surrounding me.
Although I have to tell you, I think we're looking pretty good these days.
Oh, thank you, Patti. Yeah. But my father used to say, often we have nothing to fear but longevity. And what did that tell me? What did it implant in me?
What did it implant?
What
did it implant?
What did implant was I will be disregarded
as you get older.
I will disappear.
So is that where ageism comes from?
Part of it.
Yeah.
And at the same time, my parents were very careful not to ever talk about body functions, about pain, about in fact, any kind of complaining was considered uncouth in their culture. So I have no model for how to have a conversation about fear or about aging.
I know that there have been an awful lot of very hideous deaths.
Mm.
A lot of them. And before modern medicine and before the wide use of pain medications, there was no way to avoid it. I suspect that a lot of that continues on. I suspect the trauma that our parents experienced in World War II was embedded in us. And that's why we did not really find out about how grandma died.
I never went to a funeral until I was an adult. My parents
So you didn't,
forbade me. It was not appropriate
so you
for a
didn't,
child.
you weren't allowed to learn how to go to do death as a child.
Never witnessed someone.
Yeah. I think, I lived in the country for years, and one of the first things that I did the first summer there is that I witnessed our favorite cat climb up the telephone pole and get electrocuted, and bam, she was on the ground. Mama cat, beautiful white cat with blue eyes.
Oh no.
And it shook me up.
Huh?
And I realized, yeah, this is life. This was the circle of life in front of me. It was sad. It was hard. We grieved, but we immediately grieved. We immediately dug a hole and took care of Mama Cat. And we took care of her kitties. And there was something, and then I started noticing that year, it's like the vultures in the fields when a deer was down, or when there was a cow that was down. And so you ended up being this connected to the circle of life more. And I think there's less and less of that also, like your mom not letting you go to wakes or funerals. We went to wakes and funerals, but the Irish drank a lot. It's like, well, I'm not sure that was a really good deal either. Anyway, the bottom line is that it's hard. Those kinds of things were sort of mini traumas for us. And so we don't want to talk about some of that stuff.
And they get re-stimulated as we ourselves approach those ages.
Right. And so, and also the other thing is, like, one of my grandmothers really wanted to die in the hospital because it was the only way, it was too dirty otherwise. Oh, I mean, that was that Victorian. But it meant that I didn't see the body go downhill. And it meant that the doctors were in charge. Now, those of us who've come out of the sort of the 60s and the 70s really wanted to claim our birth processes. I've been at a few home births, and I've been at several home deaths. It's like, really, it's the same circle. It's just one big circle. So how do we reclaim it? How do we pull it back together again? How do we change the trajectory of how we address fear? And and the fear of dying in particular? And what is the fear of dying? Is it really of death, or is it pain?
It's the fear of pain.
It's the fear of pain.
But it's a little more. It's emotional. There's the fear of being erased. There's the fear of the unknown. There's the fear if you've been told that Judgment Day is coming. There's a chance you're going to hell.
Right.
I don't know about you, but I'd stay alive as long as possible if I thought hell was waiting for me.
Right.
And there's
Yeah.
I've seen people who are really afraid that no one will come and take care of me. No one will love me well enough through this. I'll be abandoned. It'll be too big a challenge for me. There's all kinds of emotional worries that thrive in silence.
So what you're saying is that it really does matter how I die. It matters not just to me, but also everyone else who follows behind me.
It does. You're a mentor and a model
all the way along.
All the way through your senior years. Whether you are explicitly so or simply going to live in the memories of your family and friends.
Right. Right. Okay. Do we need to say more about this?
I'm thinking one more thing, one more aspect of the fear is fear of change.
Wow.
People just want to hold on to what's familiar. And change is coming at me. I don't know about you, but change in my eyes, change in my sleep, change in the way I walk, change in my act, change in the amount of patience I have, change in the faith that I have, change in the purposes that I address. I mean, change is coming at me in so many forms.
And we still have full mental capability.
Right.
So how scary it would be. Wow. How scary it is for people who are questioning, is their brain changing too?
Mm-hmm.
I notice I always hold on to a railing now when I go down the stairs.
Mm-hmm.
And you said to me today, I'm afraid of falling on it, breaking my hip on the ice.
On the ice.
On the
Yes.
ice, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. I didn't have that 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what would happen if I weren't afraid, Kristin? How would it change? How would it change, dear?
Enormous.
What would it be for you?
I think
Mm.
I think I've really been practicing being mortal all my life. But if I weren't afraid, I could recognize that. I could recognize that from the moment I was born, I was on way to the end. But what a ride! What a long, glorious swoop off the mountain it was or is still to glide all that way. But if I thought of it as not something new coming to threaten me, if I thought of it as just part of the same ride, it would be liberating for me.
So that's interesting. And I'm kind of going off script, but I realized that the liberation comes from reality, accepting the reality of
There you go.
where we are, and therefore being prepared for it, making preparations. I mean, that's why we do advanced directives, for instance, and why we swept, or why I have my hiking poles ready to go in the snow.
Yes.
I was ready because I didn't want to fall. So when you make the preparations, then you reduce your fear.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And you can also use fear, I think.
I did. I don't share this story a lot, and Kristin knows the story, so I'm talking to the camera.
Tell them.
It's weird talking to a camera. All I see is these little boxes. I had cancer 33 years ago now. And it was stage 3 breast cancer. I was told by the doctors at Georgetown University that I had probably 18 months to live. So I knew that the day before the biopsy, I knew that it was likely I had cancer. I mean, I knew I wasn't right, and I could feel this lump in my breast and blah, blah, blah. And so in the garden, I was praying and asked, dear God, how does someone prepare themselves for being told they have cancer? And I had worked for years as an environmental activist trying to make the world safe so that we could reduce our suffering. And so I'm sitting here going, all right, now it's my turn to suffer. What do I do? And the voice was so clear came to me and said, essentially, do not be afraid because you are loved, you are not alone, and it'll be okay. And those three parts became a mantra for me. And so when the doctor told me the next day, your life is on the line, I mean, the next day after the biopsy, your life is on the line, and we need to do all we can, the most aggressive guns possible. Geez, I was just nursing this baby 2 weeks ago. We're not doing any guns here on my boobs. So it was like, and I also knew she was wrong because I was loved, I was not alone, and it was okay. And so even though I kept getting those messages that I was in trouble, I held on to the message of love.
Mm-hmm.
And so when fear came up, I thought, well, this too is a message from God, but how can I listen to it in a way that it makes it my ally instead of being an immobilizer? And I started paying attention to what is my fear telling me, and is there something I need to change in order to reduce the fear? Just like getting my poles out so that I can reduce my fear of falling now. What can I do now when that fear comes up? How can I make it my ally? So I can listen to it to be able to validate that message of love. And so I have, you've said, let's walk into the fear.
Mm-hmm.
I often ask when the fear comes up, what's the message here? And sometimes the message is, get rid of it. It's in the way. It's not helping you at all. And other times this is your friend trying to teach you. You need to slow down and pay attention and change something now.
I have a little piece of paper taped next to my desk, and it's the start of a letter to fear, which is a neat thing to do if you are afraid. And it begins, dear fear, thank you for showing me how much I care. And I used my fear when I had cancer as an ally to show me what was vital to me, what was worth cherishing and hanging on to and living for, and what I could let go of.
Useful, right?
Yes.
Right.
So I thanked my fear.
That's a good idea. So let me now talk a little bit about fear if you're a patient in the healthcare system. Okay. As a nurse, I had a lot of people going into procedures, and I worked in for a good while. I worked in cardiology, and I had patients that were headed into surgery for pacemakers or stents, that kind of thing, that were scary. I mean, you're gonna mess with my heart. This is freaky. And I always told them this, that seemed to help. We as healthcare professionals are trained in what can go wrong. Is it essentially a training of fear? It's a fear-based system to say all these things could go wrong. And that's why before a surgery or some kind of procedure, you get this long list of risks, which is like, yes, you got to hear it. But the fact is that the healthcare professionals are the ones who hold that fear for us. And our job as patients is to balance it out, to hold on to all the good things that can happen. It's like that doctor was trained well in order to make sure that stent went to the right place. So as a patient, hold the doctor's hands in the light. Hold the image of what's going on, that stent being placed just in the right place. See that as opposed to all the things that could go wrong. And it's almost like there's a teeter-totter. The love and the holding of the space for light and wellness has to balance the fear that the medical team has to have in order so that the wellness can happen.
And their fear is becoming care, carefulness, prudence, wisdom.
Right.
So they are also transmuting their fear.
But it's very important for us as patients not to go down their rabbit hole, but for us to hold all that can be in wellness and in the restoration of whatever balance and health that can be.
What about when a provider says to you, I'm sorry, there's nothing more I can do?
I hate it. That is totally wrong. And it's suggestive of their inadequacies. It's never ever true. And there is always something more to do. What it tells you is that they have reached the limits of their abilities to cure or to save. And it says then, now's the time to get the people in, the medically trained people who know how to help us with that next phase, because there's always more comfort. There's always more kindness. There's always more softening that can be done to soften the landing, to help reduce symptoms and suffering. And that's why palliative care was established. Palliative care, as you know, and I'm trained in that, so it's like, it's hard to imagine anything other than this. But it's like um, when it appears as though someone is declining and there's more hospitalizations and more difficulties, kind of stepping down each time you get in the hospital, you don't return as well as you had gone in a few, that you were before the whatever happened. And that step down process, that slow decline, now it's time to talk to palliative care to see what's the most important thing to me. Are my legal matters intact? Are my social and financial things intact? Do we have a plan for what to do if my heart stops beating? All of those things are necessary. And sometimes I remember going into a patient's room. He and his wife and son were sitting there. It's like, I don't want to talk about palliative care. I said, you don't have to talk about it. I just want to know, how are you sleeping? Are you eating well? Are you able to get up to get to the bathroom on your own? And he was shocked that someone in the team was in the hospital was actually paying attention to things that were the hardest things in the world for him to do. And so we talked about that. What about your pain? Then we got into the pain issue. Well, yes and no. And and it was important to hear his concerns. He didn't want to be over sedated.
Mm-hmm.
He was far, far from that place. But his fear of over sedation meant that he didn't take any medication for pain, and he was suffering. So those are the kinds of things that kind of set the resources of comfort in place to help you navigate difficult transitions. Even if there's more cure available, more treatments available, that kind of comfort is a nice ally to have. And there was a really beautiful, lovely friend in our meeting who recently passed away, and his wife was telling me after he passed away that they had met with palliative care maybe 6-8 months ago. And so they had the conversation. They started about, what do I do when the cancer treatment was no longer functional, and his body was beginning to reject the toxins that were needed to handle the cancer. And so, even though it was far earlier than he needed, they had the conversation in their family open to them by a medical team. And so they came home and they were certainly like sober, about all of this. It was like, oh, this is a whole new plateau but it meant that they could begin to have the conversation and ease into it so that he actually started writing poetry. Kristin, you would enjoy knowing that. And and his wife told me that after he died, they found the poetry. That it was clear that he had begun to process information and he was knowing that he was dying and preparing. And that those poems that he wrote then were helpful to the family to know that he wasn't suffering.
So what I'm hearing you say is that if I'm not afraid, I can reformat my whole approach to healthcare and my whole approach to death.
Right, right. It's true. And I want to come back to the Quaker perspective is that um, if we reduce our fear,
Mhm.
or I should let me say it this way, more worship is more called for at this point because we want to reintroduce ourselves daily to that divine stream that we touch when we go into worship. And that being in that divine stream will help us reduce that fear. Much like that mantra I was given the day before my biopsy. It's like the doctor said, you're going to be in trouble. I thought, no, I'm not. I was told yesterday I'm going to be okay. And I am loved and I am okay. I'm not alone.
So,
I mean, she was wrong. I was going to be okay.
so the emotional component is super important. And if I'm not afraid, I can also remake my relationship
Right.
to myself, to my sense that I am not a burden, that I am not useless, that I am not ready. I might as well give up. I can see my life as a series of losses and a series of openings and can see that sometimes the loss and the opening are one and the same thing. And sometimes the grievous thing is also the greater part of love. When I was a caregiver, there wasn't a day I wasn't grieving, and there wasn't a day I wasn't immensely grateful that I was in the position to show my love, to make it real in that sense.
So that's really our testimony of integrity, accepting reality. And simplicity. Basically, we're all going to die.
And stewarding our emotions and stewarding our own value in the face of what is happening. And the older we get, I think the more valuable we get. Although our culture tends to tell us the opposite, like you're old enough to retire, you're over the hill. But no, the older we get, the more we become the linkage between generations, the more we become the keepers of history. My grandmother, whom I knew, was alive in the Civil War. I mean, think of how much history I am the bridge for and how valuable that is. I am a keeper of cultural memory. I have a longer perspective than anybody still alive in my family. I can see the whole trajectory of my life story from from babyhood into now, and I know I survived some awful things at every age, and I thrive still, and so I can assure the people around me that they too are going to get through it, and so my value keeps increasing. I know because I have that perspective, what really matters and what's the small stuff.
Right.
I know what I can let go of and what I'm never going to let go of until the last moment, you being one of those things. And I know where I'm finished being a role player, finished being fulfilling other people's expectations for me. And I know in the time left, more and more as I get older and older, what is important for me to do and be, and to the heck with lifelong constraints. If that is truly who I am, I can assume my true form. So I'm getting better and better no matter what is happening to me medically. And I'm trusting myself more along the way. I may not trust the body as much, but I'm trusting myself as a steward of myself more than ever.
I'm glad to be in it with you, honey. I need you. Lean on you sometimes.
Can you tell we're friends?
It's more than that. Even without Quaker meeting, we would be friends. But that we learned first to love each other through meeting.
We did.
And we've always worshiped together. It's powerful. And I think that community element of our worship practice is one that I need to lean on even more. I can't imagine getting old without being doing it all alone. Even if I were living alone like you are, I still have need for several people. In fact, I was thinking earlier, oh, I have a handful of people. And then I started naming them and said, no, there's more than a handful. And I would be hard pressed without all of them. And even the people that I sort of bristle with sometimes. I need them too.
Especially the people who
Rather-
call you to account.
rather not.
But you're calling in your community. And that, I think, is one of the prime things we can do in the face of fear. Call them in.
Yeah, because in fact I do. The truth is that I do call you when I get scared.
Good.
Yeah, I do.
Keep at it.
And well, you might be overloaded someday.
Nope, not possible.
But I think that's
You were just illustrating that
What?
fear. That fear.
of overwhelming.
I'll
you.
overwhelm my friends. They won't be my friends anymore. They won't really love me enough.
This is the conversation we had earlier today.
Trust me. Trust me.
Trust you. Okay, I'll trust you.
That as we grow in need, we also grow in the power to trust and the value of trust.
I should tell you we've hung out together quite a bit since over the last 30 years, but the last couple of years writing this book together. And now we can kind of tease each other. It's like when we work on a particular thing. And today we've been going, do not be afraid of this. Do not, what's the fear today?
Yeah.
So we always run into it.
Yeah.
But
there is typically a fear of either being the giver or being the receiver. I think each person may come down in a different place on that.
I just, especially since the election, I've been more and more aware of how we need to double down on worship and how when it comes to health stuff, we need to worship. We need to meditate and be more in touch with that divine stream.
But to worship together?
Together. Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's one of the advantages of Pendle Hill worship in the morning. It's one of the advantages of worship online. We could tie into worship almost anywhere around the world, probably any 24 hours, any of the 24 hours a day. And I find my meeting is more supportive. Well, actually, the meeting is holding us in the light now. I mean,
I can feel it.
Yeah, thank you. There have been a few deaths of dear friends in our meeting, and I notice how much more the remaining spouse is present and leaning on individuals in the meeting. And I've picked that up myself too, which is an honor because of the work that I've done. I'm noticing how people just want to sit near me. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
There is an increasing value for touch. And I know I'm a Reiki person, and so touch has always been important to me. But there are a lot of people who are hands off who, as they age,
don't get enough touch.
They don't get enough touch. And if you're overcoming fear, if you're going to live in love, touch is better sometimes than any word.
Right.
So when I rock babies in the NICU, one of my wonderful jobs I get to do. And that is as much healing for me as it is with babies.
Right.
Absolutely. And when the parents come in and they sit down and I see the fear in their eyes for their child who is not well, I reach out my hand and they want touch.
Oh, I bet.
They do.
I bet.
And that is, touch is the most, maybe the most primitive form of community that there is. And it's a form of worship.
It's a unity.
It's a literal
Yeah,
unity.
it can be.
That is
There's an awful lot of touch
for a
that's
greater unity.
not healing or kind.
Well, that's
But
true
yeah,
too.
you know, I mean, I don't want to glorify this whole thing, but we are trying to see the glass more than half empty. We're trying to fill it up. You know, spiritual optimism is one of these buzzwords these days, but I really do feel it.
And we talk about being in touch.
Right.
I mean, it's hard from literal
After
touch.
you know something, be in touch. Yeah, give me a call and be in touch.
Yeah.
Stay in touch.
And one of the wonderful things, gifts of becoming our age is the repairing of relationships where we aren't in touch. Coming back home to the relationship as it might be, reimagining it, reformatting old
Right.
relationships.
Let me switch over to one of the central beliefs and actually knowings of something I have about that I've learned and actually been, I think it's been sort of a gift of ministry that I've been given. And it's about the power of worship. It's about how, you know, we've been talking about we can reduce fear if we're prepared. I think it's one of the central things that we learned in doing the research for our book is that if that Quakers have always minimized focus on death, because what was important is the present, and that they felt like the preparation for death was the best preparation for death was practicing a good life.
And also practicing the being in the presence of the divine.
Correct. And so I want to kind of reiterate that. We need to be in the presence of the divine. And I was, when you were talking about touch, I was thinking about touching someone at the time of death. And it's brought me back to that how in worship, when we open and listen and allow, accept love, we really shift consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And that shift of consciousness puts us into a space of we're united. We have that unitive experience, that mystical experience of the divine that connects the whole world. I love Bill Tabor's image of the divine stream because, you know, all that work I did on water in my early environmental days, I realized the water is the blood of the planet, and water connects the entire world. So when I found Bill Tabor talking about getting into the divine stream and being the same stream that Mary and Jesus and the apostles were in, that this is the universal, eternal stream. I get that. We're in the stream that connects us all.
Mm-hmm.
And so I realized too that death essentially is, when we're dying, the process of dying is actually an out-of-body experience.
It's floating off in that stream.
Yeah, I was like, wow, that's a whole other story. I was like, how many times well, I shouldn't say how many times we've tried to have out-of-body experiences, but there were many of us in the early days. We did those things. And wow, But death is a natural process of leaving our body. And in that practice, in that process, early friends gathered around the bedside because they had that experience of someone leaving to go into eternal life. And eternal life was always in caps, by the way. And when you're moving into that space, early friends felt that any ministry, any words that the dying friend was offering was actually ministry that was closer to the divine because they were moving in that pathway. I really like a friend of mine, Robert, just said a couple of days ago, said he liked the idea of calling death a passing because it was like you pass the final and you can, congratulations, you graduate, you can go home. I was like, oh, I hadn't thought of passing in that term, in those ways, but it's like, yeah, because it is this slow process. And I've been at probably 500 deaths at least. And it is a slow process in general. I'm not talking about the violent deaths or the car accidents or the sudden heart attacks. But if we don't interfere with CPR or all sorts of medical interventions, that pathway is usually slow and comfortable and almost imperceptible. You kind of want is that the last breath? I remember sitting up.
Yeah.
Was that the last breath? Do you know if that's the last one? It's like, oh, there she's breathing again. Oh, it wasn't. But it was, yeah. When someone is well cared for in a hospice or in the hospital and well taken care of, it's a very slow process. That process is that slow becoming more and more out of breath, getting more and more into that divine stream. And I realized practicing for that so that we're not afraid of it. Practicing means getting into worship more, doubling down on it.
Mm-hmm.
And if we are afraid, what does that say about our worship? Does it say that we're not trusting? I think sometimes our fear comes from not believing that we are loved and that we're not alone and that it's going to be okay. And we now ourselves can prepare ourselves by practicing and doubling down and trusting that shift of consciousness and enjoying it more now. So it's almost like we need to worship more and longer. Early friends worshiped. Was it you who was telling me yesterday?
What 3 hour?
3 hour
Yes.
worship was common. In the School of the Spirit, we often worshiped longer than an hour. And it was like the first hour just kind of like got rid of the riffraff. And the second hour or longer allowed us to go deeper. And then the next day we would go deeper faster. It's like, don't we owe that to ourselves? Isn't that where the concept of old age being a monastery? That it allows us to be in that space of getting into that stream, that altered consciousness more frequently.
So you're not only speaking of sitting down on the bench for silent worship, because there is walking meditation, there is speaking meditation, you can be in that frame of mind and heart and spirit
more and more all day
long, even without the silence,
because that reality of the divine stream is always there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if we were serious about preparing for death, and if we were serious about making heaven on earth, now we friends would be more trusting and less afraid. So
there's a little bit of a challenge here that you are issuing.
I am. I have more than a few times. Several years ago, I had a leading to have a group of friends come together to talk about prophetic ministry. And one of the pieces of my leading was that there was a certitude about our witness. And there were friends there who were very upset about using the word certitude. How can you be certain about anything? And I thought, hello, how many years have you been worshiping? Don't you know what you know?
Yes.
And I want to say, claim it, friends, claim it. Claim what we know is that we do not have to live in fear. And it's like, we do not need to live in George Bush's world. We do not need to be afraid of each other because of COVID. We do not need to be afraid of each other because of Trump or because of whatever else is going on. Let's reach out and be with each other and listen. And that, I think, prepares us to address our latter years with more joy and love. That's kind of off the track, but that's kind of necessary to say.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So we do need to wrap up.
Okay. Okay.
And what I would like to do is wish for all of us who are here gathered that we be like the three wise men, the three wise women, the three elders. Yes. I wish for us all the courage to go the distance.
To claim our heritage, that our life really, really is love.
Yes, to go that whole distance and to go in company. They didn't go alone, talking about their experiences. So talking and companioning one another as we go. I wish for you the power to continue worshiping, to seek out worship as did the three wise ones. Even in the least likely place. And believe me, some of the hospital settings are the least likely place to feel moved to worship. And yet,
but we've made them sacred at times.
Think of worshiping in a stable. And
oh no, it's too cold. I want to be worshiping. You know what? Our dear friend Ollie just died. A hospital bed in the middle of the living room, and a group of worshipers all around, family and friends came from all over to be with him and allowed him to go gently into the night.
So there are the Magi worshiping.
Right.
And I wish for you all also that continued sense of guidance that they had, that star that they followed. I wish you find your own stars as you go. I wish it for me too, and for you too. And that we all have the power to go home again as they did when warned. Right. The Magi all went home
another way
by a different path.
Right.
And so as we all find our way, our new path, may we all make our way safely home.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Patti and Kristin. And for our participants, as you are led, please feel free to write questions and send them to Pendle Hill Q&A. We invite you to share questions that will clarify what you've heard or questions that seek to learn more about something that has been shared. And of course, we hope that this evening will be part of a continuing conversation. Maddie, who is Pendle Hill Q&A, will be moderating our Q&A, so I'll go ahead and spotlight her as you all think and send your questions to her.
Thank you, Lucas, and thank you so much, Patti and Kristin. That was really powerful. I'm really, really grateful I was able to be here listening. So as Lucas said, we have some time for question and answer. So please feel free to put your questions in the chat. We'll try to get to as many as we can. And while I wait for folks here, a question that's rising up for me, I just wish I could hear way more of the stories that you two must have of your own life and the work that you've done. And so it's a very open-ended question, but I wonder if there are any stories that rise up, perhaps that kind of continue to help us illuminate the themes that you were sharing around moving past fear or moving beyond fear. So yeah, I'm just inviting if you have any fun stories you'd like to share while we wait for more questions.
Oh my goodness. So the one that immediately leaped in my mind was a time that my friend's mother was dying, actively dying in a nursing home. And I decided to go and give her Reiki. I got to the nursing home, which was hard to find, and there was a big sign plastered on the door, and it said, "Don't come in. We're having an epidemic of flu. It's particularly virulent, and if you don't absolutely have to come in this door, don't come in." And I went back to my car and sat there in the parking lot and went, "Okay, do I absolutely have to come in?" I didn't even know her mother. I knew her, but I didn't know her mother. They hadn't specifically asked me to come. I could be easily off this hook. And I entered into worship, and the answer came absolutely without any doubt. Yes, I was supposed to go through that door. And I went through that door, and I went to the bedside and had a transcendent experience. She was suffering horribly. She had dementia, very advanced dementia, and shingles, but she didn't have the ability to understand why she was in severe pain. And her daughter hadn't slept in days, watching the process, and it was awful for both of them. And I gave them both Reiki, and it became such a peaceful, such a relaxed death. When her mother actually died, Kathy sprang up out of her chair and testified. I have never heard anybody do this. Stood, I just because she felt such a lightening and a triumph and a release from her mother's spirit. And as for me, I went home. I got that terrible flu. And because I was coughing from the terrible flu, I went to the doctor, and that's how they found out that I had lung cancer. And that's what saved my life. Wow. So how's that for following a leading of love? Yeah. Yeah. Your turn. Hard to follow that one. What was the question? It's personal stories of
transmuting fear. I gave you the biggest one about my cancer treatment.
Yeah. That stands.
I was led to I was led to talk to several doctors at different institutions, and all I could say is, but I want to be closer to home. There was no way I was going to Hopkins or Georgetown. I lived out here in the Shenandoah Valley, and I finally said, I just need to be treated at home.
So the essence of your fear was, I will be far off. I will be away from my support.
Right.
And when you listen to that fear truly.
Then I got the Washington doctor to partner with a doctor here in Winchester. And they were delighted. They had worked together at Walter Reed years prior to that. And I got the best care, better than what they were given usually in Winchester.
And we sat you down on the hospital grounds and surrounded you and gave you great Reiki, didn't
we? We did. And here I am, I had 18 months to live. Well, Anyway, pay attention to fear. It's worth it. And sometimes you need to let go of it, and sometimes you need to transmute it. Yeah.
Thank you. That was very powerful. I really, really appreciate it. We have a few questions, but I think we still have time for more, so keep them coming in the chat, folks. One that feels sort of related to what you were just saying is, how can I maximize my spiritual support, both giving and receiving, when I'm miles away from my people? And they do say that we meet in Zoom groups, but I think maybe kind of beyond just, using the technology we have, there's this question of how to maximize spiritual support when you're far away.
I want to give one answer
Sure.
to that, which is my dear friend Larry, who just died, lived in Vermont and I lived in Virginia, and he was infirm. There was no way that he could even, he couldn't travel. He couldn't hear well enough to do a phone call. So it would seem on the face of it that he was of no use for spiritual support. And he still could email. He emailed me and he said, I am here 24 hours a day for you. I want you to tell me whatever you cannot tell any other living soul. I am your listener 24 hours a day. And I did. John was dying and I had a lot of leaning to do. And he could hear, well, he's not alive anymore, but he took to his grave a whole lot of emotional secrets of mine. And there could not have been a better support. And knowing that I could at 3 a.m. if I wanted to.
I find that Zoom is really helpful. I have a spiritual friend in New Zealand who's, I imagine, is on this call. Well, she said she was going to be. And hi, Moira, wherever you are. I have been meeting with her for years, since we left New Zealand. 7 years ago, I think. We have had support committees in our meeting that have been, there was one meeting where someone was in Florida, someone was in Mexico, someone was up in New England. And two of us were in Sandy Spring together, and the focus person was somewhere else. I mean, I think we can reach out any way you need to. I've been on several support committees of people who are dying, and those are usually in person at the person's home.
But not necessarily.
When after your husband died, we were, well, before he died and afterwards, we were also not able to always be here together. And we were across 3 states. Yeah.
I want to say also, though, that you pay attention to what kind of spiritual support is needed. What is the person's language? What is the person's comfort? For some people, it's food. There are people far away, and I've sent them their childhood favorite foods, and by the U.S. mail, and that was what they needed. Very, very much from my hand to their mouth. There was somebody for whom music, was their primary, their primary joy in life. And my husband, who was then very ill, was his friend. And my husband spent a whole day collecting recordings of music, comforting music that was exactly in the style that our friend enjoyed, and made him a whole hour's worth of music, and he would play it nonstop in the hospital to comfort him during those hours, and there was nobody with him, nobody beside him, and it kept him going.
I hope some of that helped people with that person have a sense of more creativity, because there's community everywhere if we reach out for it. Yeah.
And the person, the person who is dying is not the only one who needs support, but the whole family around them. And a crucial thing that your questioner might do is to find out who is not getting supported, who is a support person, who's a family member for the dying one, for the ill one, and be sure that they have the strength to go the distance.
Thank you. We have another question that the person is asking for any guidance for how one tells when it is appropriate to raise this question, of the question being about possibly being afraid of dying with a friend. How do you know when it's appropriate to get into this question specifically, and maybe more generally, just fears of death and all the themes you've been sharing?
Let me say one thing about this real fast. Number one, if someone is in the hospital these days, they are only there because, well, or maybe a short-term procedure, but if you're hospitalized, it is because most likely there's a potential for death. So I want to say, if you're worried about asking someone who is in the hospital about death, let me tell you, that person in that bed is already thinking about it. So opening the topic, tiptoeing in, might be a phenomenal relief that we can now talk about the elephant in the room. That's one thing. How else?
Well, certainly one way to open the question is to talk about your own feelings.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not, well, Mom, are you comfortable with the idea that you're going to die? It's, Mom, I love you so much that sometimes I am very afraid of losing you. And that opens the door to help me be comfortable with what.
Or not even help me be comfortable. I am just scared.
I'm scared, Mom. I'm here for you all the way.
Here we are.
But I'm scared. And to model having feelings, saying your feelings out loud, sometimes is all the permission that's needed for the other person. Although it isn't.
I almost want to hear more from that person.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the situation is.
Yeah, it's hard. But if someone has repeated hospitalizations or is getting more frail, I've also seen those people who live in retirement communities who see their neighbors die on a semi-regular basis. I assure you, those people are already thinking about it. And it would be a great gift to be able to somehow open the topic. And that somehow could just be, I'm afraid of this.
Yeah.
I'm noticing this. Where are you on it?
There. I also feel like it's better to ask forgiveness than to ask permission. Like, would it be all right if we talk about this? You could say.
That's a good
would it be all right with you if we talk about this? And if the person goes, whatever made you think about that? I think I was dying. I mean, if that happens, then you say, I'm sorry. But chances are very good, as you were saying, that they will welcome it. They need a way in. Yeah.
Thank you. And I'll say the person did message that the specific context of that question, the person is younger. They say they are younger than I am and has a life-threatening form of cancer, but not in the hospital.
Yeah. Then have they talked to their doctor about it? What's it looking like down the road? How can I help you walk this walk?
Because a younger person probably doesn't have it. I have so many peers who've either died or are dying or are old or yeah, certainly at my age.
But
at my age, but a younger person may feel very much more isolated in their illness.
But those kinds of life-threatening diseases make you think about it.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's yeah. And if you don't meet the person and just be with them and allow space for that conversation. If you walk away and not say anything, it's almost like it abandons the other person that needs to be supported. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for that. I think what I'm going to do now is read two little comments that folks shared, and then maybe have one final question, and then we'll close. So one person earlier on mentioned that they enjoyed that the Magi brought myrrh, which is a perfume to embalm the dying. And they mentioned that we sing that hymn at Christmas, reminding us that death is a part of the journey. Thanks for tonight. And then another comment, the person shared a story about the benefits of naming impending death. When my mom was dying and everyone around was gathered around, one day she asked, "Why are we all here? What are we waiting for?" My daughter got up in bed with her and said, "Grammy, we're not positive, but we think it might almost be time for you to go to heaven. Would that be okay?" Then she got a huge smile on her face and said, "Oh, yes, that's what I've been waiting for my whole life. Thanks for coming." And it lightened the remaining days tremendously for all of us.
Oh, that's nice.
Wonderful.
So that Grammy has taught so many people not to be afraid. And telling that story helps too. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that story.
Yeah.
So maybe with our final minute or two before I hand it over to Lucas to close us out, I wonder, you mentioned touch and prayer as two of the practices that you found helpful. And I'm wondering maybe if you'd like to kind of close with any other practices that you find helpful, maybe for yourself or for others in your journeys.
Oh. Well, what are your spiritual practices? I know mine include yoga and sitting in with spirit in my breath, a walking meditation.
I wake every morning and enter to begin the day, enter into divine love. And feel it in myself, and then filling the house, and then filling the people that I love, and then filling the people that I don't love, and filling the whole planet. So that sense of my heart expanding well beyond my own limits, I think is a precursor to being able to expand beyond my own body when the time comes.
I'm a little bit more focused here. I get into the shower, the divine stream, imagining the divine stream just pouring through me and cleaning me all up, and just infusing me with that little bubbly, like ozone, kind of cleaning me out. That helps too.
I had trees, and I lie on the ground and I feel the life that is going to persist beyond me in forms that I cannot fully fathom.
One of the things that I learned in cancer, after trying to be all organic for so long, it's like it didn't help me. It's like I now bless my food. And I bless the farmers who gave it to me. And I just am grateful. And I try to minimize stress.
My background is Jewish. And so when you say grateful, the first thing you say in the morning, the first morning prayer is, because I'm female, it's moda. Otherwise it would be modeh, but it means gratitude, grateful. The very first word out of your mouth when you speak in the morning.
And as a Catholic,
is gratitude.
As a Catholic, we went to bed saying thank you.
All right.
There you go. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Kristin.
Thank you.
So So let's settle into our silence when Lucas does what he needs to do. Thank you. And I appreciate everyone coming tonight. It's been delightful.
Thank you so much, Patti and Kristin. And thank you everyone for joining us in this experiment in spiritual learning community. The recording of this event and other Pendle Hill offerings will be available on our YouTube channel, Pendle Hill USA. Just to remind, you will also receive an email in the coming week with a link to the transcript, recording, the queries which Patti and Kristin mentioned, as well as other resources and other opportunities to continue learning with Pendle Hill. You can also learn more about our upcoming programs on our website at pendlehill.org/learn. And lastly, I'll just highlight two upcoming items. Our next First Monday lecture is titled The Exponential Impact of Historical and Ongoing Injustice, a Call to Action for Quakers. This is a Black History Month First Monday lecture with Dr. Harold Howe Weaver, as well as Nzizwe Madlala Routledge, and this will be February 3rd. We also invite you to take a look at our podcast if you haven't. It's called The Seed, Conversations for Radical Hope. This season's theme is transformative power and world building and imagination. So it picks up on a lot of the themes about transforming our lives that we've talked about tonight. One last thank you to everyone, and let's close with a few moments of silence.